Good morning. Good morning. My name is Claudia Berry, and I am the Vice President of HASP. I am filling in for President John Cobes, who is truly experiencing lifelong learning by taking a trip to the Far East to learn more about that. So this morning, as we begin this great program, please turn off your cell phones. Take a minute, check to make sure they're off. I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce to all of you, both those on streaming, which we welcome, and those here in the audience, our new Executive Director, Amy Weber. And I'd like Amy to come out, give us a big wave, and we're going to clap for her. I said, she could choose her wave, whatever she wanted to do. Amy has said to me that she would like to make her first official words to you at the June 11th board meeting. So let's come back and hear what Amy will have to say to us. This morning, we are welcoming two new members, and that is Joyce Wright and Juan Mascaro. So we welcome them. Our program today was made possible by three very dedicated HASP members. They are Lynn Berkey, Bob Parrish, and Tina Pollack, all of whom serve on the monthly program committee. And they felt it was very important that all of us learn how to define good county government. So they've prepared a statement that I'm going to read before I introduce our speakers. HASP as an organization has always worked to be nonpartisan, while at the same time not shying away from bringing programs on important and timely topics to you, our members. Today's program is an example of that desired balance. We are asking you all to work with us to maintain it. Accordingly, at this morning's program, no comments or questions will be accepted or responded to that focus upon actions or statements of specific Ottawa County Commissioners or specific actions that the current Ottawa County Commission has taken or discussed. Please make sure that your comments and questions are of a general nature related to the subject of good county governance. So in order to have an understanding of good county governance, monthly program has come two speakers. Our first speaker is Eric Lupher, who is part of the Citizens Research Council of Michigan and has been there since 1987. He serves as their president since 2014, and he has conducted studies on a number of different state and local government policies with extensive work on local finance, organization, consolidation, and collaboration. Eric has earned a bachelor degree in international relations from James Madison College at Michigan State University, and a Master of Public Administration from Wayne State University. Eric will explore the essentials role of county governments in Michigan. Our second speaker will be Jim Storey, who was first elected to the Allegan County Commissioners in 2012, where he now serves as the board chair and represents District 1, that's City of Holland, Fillmore, Laketown, Overijssel, and Salem Township. Jim also serves as president of the Michigan Association of Counties Boards of Directors. He has previously held leadership positions at the West Michigan Airport Authority, Holland BPW, and the Michigan Liquor Control Commission. Now, he is a graduate of U of M. Just keep that in mind. Jim will be our second presenter, and he will join Eric and offer personal examples of good county government in West Michigan. At the conclusion of their presentations, we will open it up to questions. Thank you. Eric.
Good morning, everyone. I appreciate you having me here today on this rainy spring day. It's not snowing. We'll take the win. So I want to start off with the commercial. I want you all to know that there's a place to go to for information about your state and local governments that is provided in a very independent, nonpartisan way. There are organizations out there that will tell you about the small government that we should have, the very libertarian free market approach to government, and there's organizations out there that'll tell you about what government can and should be doing in a very progressive way. The Citizens Research Council aims to be right down the middle with the idea of we the people who ultimately become the elected officials among us don't have good information, you're not going to make good decisions. And if we can't agree on the facts, we can't have a constructive conversation with each other. So for 109 years now, our anniversary is in April, so this marks our 109th year, or the beginning of our 109th year, we've been operating to fill that purpose. And you can find our website, crcmich.org, just about anything to do with state and local government in Michigan. We've written about at some point, and if it's a current issue, drop us a note. We can provide information, update that information, get you what you need. Paul Hilligan's over here. He's on our Council of Trustees, and he's a walking commercial for the Citizens Research Council if you ever need any information. He's from here and knows us very well. So, as was described, my role today is let's provide the basics for county government. What does county government do? What does it look like? What does the governance structure look like? And then provide a little bit of information as I turn it over to Jim. What does good county government look like? What should you be looking for? How can we evolve county government to really fill a vital role? So let's start with the basics. As you think about government generally, what type of things do we ask government to do? First of all, we want the government to know who we are. So we ask the government to track how many people are born, how many people die, who gets married. We want to know who owns what property, and the government is the arbiter of that, keeping track who bought what parcel. Have they paid their taxes? Is the bank satisfied that they've paid all the banknotes? They track business licenses. Is a business, have they done everything they will need to so you, the customer, know that they're an up-and-up business that's doing everything they should be? We make laws laws are to manage the interaction between people. And we need somebody to enforce those laws. So whether the laws are made at the state, local, or local level, we need somebody to execute those laws and arbitrate when people disagree, and manage the use of land. So there's certainly a free market approach where we could have private roads or private piers, shipping or things like that. But in the United States, we have come to expect the government to play some role in the use of the land, transportation, zoning, things like that. When you start a state, that you have to think about, well, how am I going to do that? At some point, we decided we're going to put the capital in Lansing, but we can't have law enforcement based in Lansing and going out to all corners of the state. So we've subdivided the state into what we call counties. And when you think about those things that I just went through, counties are the administrative arm to do those things that we expect of government. So the state is up there in Lansing saying we need laws to address this and that and another thing, but then they often turn to the counties to say, I need you to do that for me. So how do we count people and businesses? We ask the county clerk to do that. How do we enforce the laws? Well, we have a sheriff, county sheriff, we have a prosecuting attorney, we have the court system, all centered around the counties. When we think about land use, we have the Drain Commission, the Road Commission for transportation. All those are county-based. And certainly we have local government within that, but usually that is, the local governments are there to provide the quality of life. So as you think about Holland and 8th Street right here, it's the city government that really created a nexus to have commercial district there and the Tulip Festival and things like that. Providing the quality of life, and certainly then you have local law enforcement and other things. And there's no rhyme or reason to the structure of government. We have townships generally 36 square miles. If you look at the lower half of the state, if you've ever flown over looking at the state, it sort of looks like a checkerboard because the roads are often organized around those townships. But as you get further up north, they're much bigger than the 36 square miles. Population ranges from just a few hundred people in some township to hundreds of thousands in our urban areas, especially around Southeast Michigan. In the cities, we range from generally 1 square mile. Often we think of cities and we think of places like Holland and Grand Rapids and Detroit and Lansing, big cities, but most of our cities in Michigan are very small, generally about a square mile. Detroit, 138 square miles. They range from 300 people to 600,000 people. Part of what we have broken in Michigan is a lack of a system to say at certain sizes you should evolve from one thing to the next, from a township to a village to a city. But that's a whole different speech. So there's many great people in county government doing great things, but part of why this is an interest, why you would want to come here today, is we have created a system of county government that hasn't evolved and is set up without a system of checks and balances. So as I raise to you the idea of government, you maybe think about first the federal government, where our brilliant founding fathers said, we can't have a king with all powers. We need 3 different branches of government, and they're co-equal with certain checks and balances. The president having veto power, the Senate having the power to review appointees, the law-making powers separate from the role to execute those, and judicial review of the whole thing. The states replicated that, right? Or if you're one of the original 13 states, you had that, and then the federal government replicated it. But in Michigan, we said, I want to do what they're doing, and we're going to take that federal system and create it in Michigan, with the governor having veto power and the Senate having the power to review and so on. But when you think about county government, it's much different. We have the treasurer, the clerk, the sheriff, the prosecuting attorney, the register of deeds. All are autonomous. They're all co-equal, but they don't balance powers amongst each other. Each one is elected to execute a specific set of responsibilities. We have the court system that's really part of the state system, but the counties are asked to provide space, pay part of the judge, pay the support staff and so on. We have road commissions that in some states are part of county government. Here in Ottawa County, they're separate. It is the Ottawa County Road Commission, so you would think it's part of county government, but it's really an autonomous branch. And then off to the side, we have our county commissioners. What do? Well, they decide how much money to appropriate to these different departments, treasury and clerk and so on. And when you start trying to make that decision, then you have to decide, well, how much money do you need to do that? How much are you getting from the state? And how do you supplement that, either with fines and fees or with taxes? So the commissioners are deciding what tax rate to levy on the people. And then we've asked counties to do more things. So the commissioners have both the legislative role in deciding the tax rates and how to execute those, but also some executive responsibilities, because they're the ones responsible for hiring the public defender, a parks commissioner, on and on. So there's some responsibilities, some offices that report directly to the commission. The public health is a little bit nuanced in that, so I didn't loop that in, but ultimately there's some responsibility there. But notice I didn't put any lines back and forth between the commission and those autonomous offices. Really, the only balance of power there is the power of the purse. And the county commission can choose to almost appropriate nothing to any of those. And the courts have said almost nothing is mandated of those. You could find a way to execute a lot of those responsibilities. So it's the power of the purse, but ultimately you, the people, are electing those commissioners and those autonomous offices. So if a county commission decided to cut something way down, ultimately they would have to answer to you, the people, at the ballot. So how do they end up being autonomous? Our Constitution lays out a number of officers, executive officers, and it says we have to have those 5 autonomous offices I showed you, the clerk and treasurer and so on. So there's no room for the county commission to say, we don't need a sheriff anymore, we'll just rely on the townships and the cities to do it. Or we don't need the clerk anymore, we can automate that and just be done with it. The Constitution says every county has to have that. It also lays out, I have supervisors / commissioners. The Constitution, if you read it, talks about supervisors. I'll explain that later. But I've sort of walked through this already. There's dual rules for the legislative and executive branches, the power of the purse, and then some legislatively assigned responsibilities for the public health office, the public defender office, and a lot of discretionary. So as you travel among the 83 counties, you'll find some having some offices and some don't. And the beauty of having 83 counties is each one can choose what services their people desire, what their cities and townships are providing so they don't need to, or because their cities and townships are not providing it, maybe the county should fill that role. I'm not going to walk through all these, but hopefully the font is kind of big enough that you can see it. Generally, what do these offices do? The county clerk is that administrative role, so births, deaths, business names, marriage license. They play a clerk role for the county departments, tracking expenditures, secretary for the Board of Commissioners, administering elections, apportionment commission, and so on. County treasurer, as you would assume, tracking the money, how much has come in, how the funds are being dispersed, items like that. County sheriff, in the places where the townships are not playing a significant role, the county sheriff is the police department. Otherwise, it is generally in the background, managing the jails, managing the court system, items like that. The progressive counties have actually had the county sheriff playing the role of police even in cities, things like that. They're contracting to provide those services. I'll get back to that a little bit later. The prosecuting attorney, once somebody is arrested, it becomes the job of the prosecuting attorney to make the case of the person's guilt or argue the state on the state's behalf. So that's pretty self-explanatory. The Register of Deeds gets back to that property responsibility. Who purchased the land? Have they paid their taxes? Where exactly is the survey line that defines that parcel? There's some opportunity to combine the Register of Deeds with the clerk's office because a lot of that is very administrative, a lot of overlap. And then the other county commission offices, I could make this list go on and on if you look at all 83 counties, but they're sort of off to the side, not the same. So let's talk a little bit about the county commission to help you understand, because I'm going to get back to this later. Until the 1960s, we had what we called county boards of supervisors. And if you start by thinking about going back to that slide with the cities and townships within, every township has a supervisor, a clerk, a treasurer, and a couple of trustees. And the city government would have a mayor and a county city council. So the idea with county government in its original form, because it was performing those administrative tasks, doing the clerk, the sheriff, and so on, was we just need somebody to monitor what's going on, appropriate funding to each departments, and let them go do their thing. So the system was set up that for every township would have a supervisor sit on the county board, and every city could assign representatives to the county board according to their population. So we had as many as 60 county commissioners in Wayne County, and it just got to be a jumbled mess, in addition to the fact that it was unproportional. If we had that system today, you could see that Chester Township has about 2,100 people as of the 2020 census, and Georgetown Township has 54,000. So you think about sort of representation. If you live in Chester Township, you have much greater say proportionally on what your county is doing than a resident of Georgetown Township. Ultimately, the courts were asked to decide this, and they said, well, that's not working. We need to move away from that. Reynolds v. Sims was the landmark case, but there were a number of other cases related to that. And they did away with this system. It affected our state representation, how we chose our representatives, and how we drew their lines for Senate and the House of Representatives. It affected the county as well. And ultimately, we had to get rid of the County Board of Supervisors and move to a county commission with the counties drawn into lines to create equal representation, equal number of residents in each district. It's up to each county how many commissioners they want. They can have anywhere from 5 to 35 commissioners. Ottawa has 11. And it laid out, then the new law laid out what responsibilities the county boards of commissioners could have, legislative powers, administrative powers. So not much changed in that transition other than how we chose who was going to be on that county board. So as you think about that, then what is the opportunities for good government? I would start by saying our best county governments are those that are trying to reduce the duplication of services. You think about, you raise the idea of a regional form of government, as some have done. I know even here in the greater Holland area, how do you do things at a higher level. While we have regional government, we call it county government. I put down here a list of several services that governments provide, and you can see, depending on where you live, that might be provided by the city, the state, a village, or a township, the county government, special districts. We could consolidate that list, move several of those services into the county government, and be better off for it. Why would you do that? Well, the primary reason is that there's great inequities among the different local units of government. Port Sheldon Township has roughly $65,000 per person of tax base. On the other end, Cooperville City has less than 20,000. Now we're expecting those governments to do basically the same things. Actually, we're asking Cooperville City to do more things. But if everything were done at the county level, those would all just be part of the same tax base, and the county could provide those services across the whole jurisdiction. And what would that look like? Well, I would start with the administrative task. Do you really care whether it's a county clerk or your city clerk or township clerk that's doing the accounting, tracking the expenditures of your unit of government, that's doing the assessing? Often the cost of having an assessor is greater than a lot of our local governments can afford. So having somebody very skilled at the county level makes a lot more sense. Having IT done at the county level provides all sort of opportunities for efficiency. So those are the easy ones. But as you start going down that role, I would say, why not even the police department? The cost of having the police on the streets, it doesn't matter. You're going to put an officer in the car, and you have to have the car with the computer. So there's no real efficiency to be gained in that way, but it's the back office stuff. And if every township and every city has to have their own law enforcement, tracking the crimes and things like that, it becomes very inefficient. So if I had my county police doing all of the services, and we wanted to have officers in Ottawa, in Holland City with brown officers and brown cars, and in Coopersville having blue blue uniforms and blue cars, that's a negligible cost. I don't care about. There's a lot of things that we could do in a regional nature, dealing with transit and garbage, the garbage dump, the public health. All those things the county could be doing better than a lot of the local governments can do on their own. And in doing so, it makes the whole county more attractive. So while I think Port Sheldon was on my far left, I guess yours too, it has great capacity to do things. Now you can lift the whole county and not just have those with the most able to do things, make the whole county a better place to be. To do that, I would argue that we need to change a number of things. Modernizing county government would be part of it, providing the resources the counties need, and that wouldn't be just a property tax. The county government would be the primary place to levy a local option sales tax or local option income tax or things like that, provide the counties the opportunity to provide services. But it also requires a major mindset, because in Michigan particularly, we have become very accustomed to saying our local government is where I go to, my city, my township, and they're the ones responsible for it. So I can go from county to county preaching this gospel, but unless the people understand the opportunity, and ultimately it's less taxes, but it takes a few steps to get there. How do you know if your county's government is doing a good job? I often say county government is our invisible form of government. How many of you know who your county commissioner is or who your county clerk is? You usually only interact with county government if you need to go for a document of some sort, a birth certificate, death certificate, something like that. God forbid you're stuck in the criminal justice system and now you're interacting with the sheriff or the prosecuting attorney in some way, the court system. You often drive on county roads, but we don't mark them as county roads, so do you know when you're on a county road? Only when you've hit the pothole in your township or your city office says that's not our road, you need to call the county. So the thing to keep in mind with this, you don't hear about them except when things are going wrong. And for years and years, things haven't been going wrong, thus the invisible form of government. So should we really be anxious to change things in a major way? I would argue part of what we could do to make county government is to end the partisan election of county officers. You think about those constitutional offices I described. Is there a Republican or Democrat, or choose any other label for a political party, way of administering birth certificates or death certificates? Until a few years ago, I would say there isn't a Republican or Democratic way of being a sheriff or a prosecuting attorney, but I'm being proven wrong on that. But I think that's a function of the fact that we've made that opportunity more than it's inherent in the office. So we've instilled, both at the township level and the county level, a level of partisanship that need not be there. It's in the Constitution, so it would require a constitutional amendment to change it, I think. But it's a way that we can make county government better. Is your county government working for you? Well, ask about the level of transparency. Are there public hearings to listen to the will of the people? Are decisions being made in open meetings? Are the public records available to everyone? This is good government anywhere, whether you're talking about your dog catcher or state government. We, the people, want to know what our representatives are doing, and we want to be able to see proof of what they've done. And let me end with this thought. I started off talking about the lack of checks and balances in our county form of government. Way back in the 1920s, my organization started talking about the opportunity for charter county government to bring that more classic form of American government into our county system. In the 1960s, we finally introduced a law in Michigan to do that. In the 1970s, Wayne County became the first county to do it. And the idea is that you usually elect a county executive. In our current system, for most of the counties, they have a county administrator who's kind of the city manager, beholden to the county commission to do things, but no real powers of checks and balances. The elected executive provides those checks and balances. So you think about veto power, the power to create the budget and adopt hiring responsibilities, the more classic executive role of a county leader. And that creates a system of checks and balances with the county commission. We're steering clear of the politics of this, but you can think about those things and some of what's been going on in Ottawa and start to connect the dots about some of what's been missing. So with that, let me remind you that our website is crcmich.org. For those of you on social media, you can find us with little trouble. And let me turn it over to Jim.
Well, good morning, everyone. I hope you are enjoying the liquid sunshine that is going to benefit us all, and particularly a great many numbers of my county who depend upon that to feed us all. And so, first of all, I want to thank Claudia for that nice introduction. Claudia and I have been in many groups together over our residency here in Holland, and it's always good to see her, and I recognize a number of faces and friends that I've had over the years living here in Holland. And I really thank HASP for this opportunity to talk about county government, and really you brought in one of the stars researchers in that. Eric, thank you for being here. It's really great. I've entitled my presentation to you, Allegan County, the emerging county that works. And if there's a little bit of boast in that, I hope you will accept it as a good boast, because for so many years, frankly, Allegan County, when you bring up that name, a number of people would say, oh yeah, that's the Mississippi of county government in Michigan. And oh yes, that's the place where there are drug busts. And nothing really that spoke to the heart and soul of our county. And one of the things I really want to pause here just for a moment, and that is to talk to you about our seal, which I hope is quite visible. Yes, it is. And that is, it really represents to me the qualities of our county. Now, again, people over the years have kind of made fun of that seal. But let me draw your attention to three aspects of it. One is in the, would be the lower left quadrant. You see wheat and corn stalks representing the agricultural aspect of our county. And then in the right quadrant, you see a maple leaf and some other foliage representing the recreational opportunities we have. More about that later. And then, of course, dominated by our goose. A lot of people would say, if you had to pick a bird, why would you pick a goose? Well, I didn't do that. It came with the job, so to speak. But think about geese. First of all, the goose and the gander usually stay together throughout their lives and take care of their offspring. The goose is a team player. When they fly, you don't just see one goose flying, you see a whole team flying. And of course, people who have studied it have said they take roles at the beginning to kind of pave the way for the team. And finally, the goose always leaves us a little gift when they've left. So in this particular slide, I want to point out the goose is flying from Lake Michigan, flying east. Of course, our county starts at Lake Michigan. And so also here is a kind of a map that really kind of shows the boundaries of we're bounded on the north by Ottawa and Kent, on the east by Barry County, on the south by Kalamazoo and Van Buren County, and of course on the west by Lake Michigan. But there are some things in that I want to point to. There are 24 townships, 7 cities, Holland being the largest city, but not the largest unit of government in Allegan County, and 2 villages. We're a big county, 900 square miles, with 120,000 people spread throughout that big expanse. Our county was organized in 1835, 2 years before statehood in Michigan. And presently we have 120,500 souls who call Allegan County home. The bigness of the county can be also expressed a different way, and that is from Laketown Township in the northwest to Plainwell and Gunplain Township in the southeast. It takes you a minimum of an hour, maybe an hour and 15 minutes if you're doing it legally. Also, I want to use the map to talk a little bit about our economic impacts. Certainly here in the Holland area, manufacturing is big. In fact, I would say that the manufacturing muscle of the city of Holland is in the Allegan County portion. And I want to tell you a little secret. With the recent annexation, the portion of the city of Holland in Allegan County has for the first time outpaced our neighbors to the north. And also, while we're in the Holland area, go down the lake a little way to Saugatuck and Douglas, and you see the emphasis on tourism. Those two fine communities go from a population of about 3,000 year-round to 15,000 in the summer months. And then on the west side, on the east side of the county, we have probably the #1 tourist draw in the area, and that is the Gun Lake Casino, which right now is building a $300 million new hotel. Employs 1,000 people. And in between all of that is our agricultural industry, which is the #1 agricultural county in both diversity of product and value of product every year in the state of Michigan. Now, having given you that kind of background of our county, here's what we have to do to take care of all of that. Our annual budget is about $50 million, going up, and that covers many of the services that you may see on the slide, which I hope you can see a little bit. We take care of our courts, 2 circuit court judges, soon to be 3, 2 district court judges, and a probate judge. 3 of those will be up for election this year, by the way, if there are any attorneys who are looking for a new line of work. We also have, as Eric pointed, the officers of the county, the clerk and register of deeds, the treasurer, prosecuting attorney, the drain commissioner, and of course the sheriff. 2 points on those is that between the court system, the prosecutor, and the sheriff, that commands 60% of our annual county budget. The other 40% are some of the other activities up here. I'd also point out for the drain commissioner, we have, count them, 800 drains, which you might understand, important to our agricultural business. And the sheriff, you're all familiar, of course, when you see the sheriff's road patrol cars. But they have many other duties, and the only constitutional duty the sheriff is required to perform is to run a jail. And so we have a correction staff. We also staff school resource officers in conjunction with the local school districts. And because you've noticed we have a fair amount of water, we have a marine patrol that, of course, is active in the warmer months, both on Lake Michigan and connecting waterways and inland lakes. Then there are the administrative departments, health department, parks, our equalization director and his staff to make sure that what you pay is proportional in Laketown to what you pay in Gunplain Township or the city of Holland for your taxes. Animal control and the animal shelter. We have a juvenile corrections facility, which we run both for our county and Van Buren and Berry counties. 911 dispatch. You call for help for medical or fire or law enforcement. It's 911 that gets that person to you for help. Emergency management. If we have storms, we have storms. We have an emergency management director who plans sequences of activities to make sure we're ready when that need arises. And of course, internal stuff, human resources with 400 employees. They all have needs and wants and sometimes complaints that need to be addressed. And then facilities management. For all of these departments, everything that's above where I've been, Allegan County is the landlord. We're the landlord for the judges, we're the landlord for the sheriff, et cetera, et cetera. So we have to have a facilities department that keeps those in good shape. And then, of course, there's the Board of Commissioners. I'll talk about that in a few minutes. The board is also responsible for policy areas. First things I've just talked about are all budget areas. We also can enact ordinances. The most recent ordinance we enacted was to permit ORVs to operate on county roads, like 66 other counties permit. We also have to enact policies for travel, hiring and firing for the human resources, and many others. But the Board of Commissioners is the one that enacts those policies. Okay, and so what about the elected Board of Commissioners? This is our map for our 5 commission districts. As mentioned by Claudia, I'm District 1, and happily the cartographer who developed this put my district in blue. Had nothing to do with that. No one supposed to read there. We have, as Eric alluded to, we have 5 current commissioners. We used to have 7 prior to the census, but the Independent Apportionment Commission has the right to make 2 decisions. They decide the number of commissioners, and then they decide the size of the districts. We went down from 7 to 5, even though our population between 2010 and 2020 went up 8%. No one's been quite able to explain how that happened. I'll leave it there. But frankly, each of these districts represent about 22,000 people that each commissioner represents. And now that since we are in a very fine performing arts facility, I want to introduce the stars of the show. These are our current commissioners. From your left to my right, Commissioner Gail Dugan from Otsego Township, Commissioner Scott Beltman from Monterey Township or Hopkins area, yours truly, Commissioner Dean Kappinga, who lives in Manlius Township with a Hamilton address, and Commissioner Mark DeYoung, who lives and represents the Door area. The board meets twice a month, all day, second and fourth Thursdays, and you can participate. We stream all of our meetings, and we also make them available through Zoom. We start at 9 in the morning and usually adjourn by 4 in the afternoon. But that's not all we do. Here are a number of boards and commissions that we all serve on. The 911 Board, which runs the dispatch agency, the Lakeshore Regional Entity and On Point, which are 2 mental health agencies, which the county creates and takes care of. Our Commission on Aging, which delivers about 1,300 meals a month to our senior population. We have a medical care facility that cares for people who are either disabled or at a state in their life where they need constant care, and we have a facility for them. The Economic Development Commission, a community action agency, and of course, a couple of us work on the Michigan Association of Counties, which helps all 83 counties in our state, and the West Michigan Airport Authority. Let me pause there to say the last time I spoke to a HASP gathering was about 14 years ago, and it was on the transformation of Tulip City Airport into the West Michigan Airport. But you guys have grown. When I did that speech, you were in the upper room with the Knickerbocker, and so congratulations for all of that. And there are a number of other things, but each of our commissioners serve on these bodies as representatives. So it isn't just 2 meetings a month that have sometime been advertised. It's also many other things. Just want to talk to you for a few minutes about some of our current projects. Broadband expansion, and then I'll get into these each individually. Our courthouse renovation and office relocation, our Calkins hydroelectric dam's future, and the Lakeshore Drive washout replacement. Broadband expansion. When the federal government appropriated American Rescue Plan dollars to each local unit, we had a choice to make. We could make it for any number of activities. Our county was awarded just shy of $23 million, and we decided as a board that we needed to take care of the people who could not join us virtually like many are today. That was about 36% of our population could not do that, and so we decided to dedicate our ARPA funds to finding a solution for that. We attracted a contractor among 13 who would match our contribution. We pledged $17 million of our $23 million. They pledged to match it, and then we went to the state for their ARPA allocation. Total project is $65 million. It is underway. It's about 13% complete as I talk to you today. And we will see the installation of 1,000 miles of fiber optic cable and serve 11,000 addresses that are currently either underserved or not served at all in our rural county. By the end, we hope, working with some other providers that aren't covered by the 123net contract, that when we get done in about a year and a half, that about 90% of our county will now be able to access the internet. Courthouse renovation. I alluded to the fact that we're getting an additional circuit court judge, our 3rd circuit court judge. The picture you see of our courthouse doesn't look like that today. because the area behind the statue is now under construction to provide for that. In the meantime, the courthouse was too crowded, not enough space, because this building was originally built in 1960, has had 1 or 2 additions since then, but still we were running out of space. So what did we do? And as you can see from the other picture, that's an aerial shot of the parking lot outside our courthouse, and that's a picture on jury day. And so if you happen to need your dog license, or you need a marriage license, or pay your property taxes, and you come on jury day, you're going to have to go all through these cars just to get for a 2 or 3 minute transaction. So we decided we had vacant space on our Dumont Lake campus, and we decided we would ask our officers to move up there, and we're renovating that space while we renovate the courthouse and make an addition to it. It's a $10 million project using existing buildings, and I call it using the Allegan model. What's the Allegan model? When we needed to build a new jail in about 2010, 2011, we had many choices. One was to build a new jail from ground, which was a $35 million proposition. But then we bought a closed Hayworth seat factory, converted that to our corrections facility and sheriff's office for $20 million. The net saving to our residents, as you can see, was great. That's our first use of the Allegan model. Rather than building new, find a good structure in place, convert it, cost a lot less. In the building of the sheriff's thing, it was about $98 a square foot, versus building new would be about $200. The second one is our mental health facility. We had 3 mental health buildings, decided to collapse them into one, and we converted a old big box store in the city of Allegan. That saved several tens of millions, $100 a square foot versus $225. And then finally, with this project, we're again putting the Allegan model to work. Instead of building a new courthouse like a couple of adjacent counties have, we are reusing existing space. The buildings are sound structures and have many architects and engineers tell us at least 30 more years of life left in them. The Calkins Hydro Dam. How many people knew we had a hydroelectric dam in Allegan County? All right, good. It's operated by Consumers Energy, has been since 1935, when Consumers was known as Consumers Power. And it joins 12 other hydroelectric facilities in the Lower Peninsula. Consumers has initiated a very long review of their sustainability going forward. Together, the 13 dams generate about 2% of the electric demand put on the consumer system. And one of their options is to remove the dam or sell it. But it would have a tremendous, and I would say negative, impact on our county. It's located in Allegan and Valley Townships, or just kind of northwest of the city of Allegan. And we have 2,000 residents who live around the Allegan, Lake Allegan, which is behind the dam. And it also is a source of great recreation opportunity. So we are working with a citizen group called the Lake Allegan Association and Consumers Energy. This past meeting, we formed what's called a prosperity group. The county will be part of it, but won't be driving it. Many of you are familiar with the Outdoor Discovery Center, and they are the staff agency that will help us make the case for keeping this in place, for the benefit of our county, and I would argue for the benefit of electric customers throughout the state of Michigan. Another issue that I've been personally working on, quite frustrated at this point, the Lakeshore Drive, which runs up, of course, along the lakeshore, section in Saugatuck Township, washed out in 1988, thus severing the tie from the south part of our county to Saugatuck and Douglas along the lakeshore. Been trying to find enough money to relocate it, working with our road commission, because they, of course, have control over all the roads. It's about a $5 million cost to relocate the that section inland a little bit so that we don't face, when there are high waters on Lake Michigan and the big storms come along and they erode it, face this going forward. That's the nice part of it. The important part of it is that because of where this washout occurred, it's about 3 times the normal response time to people south of the washout for the Saugatuck Fire Department than it is for those to the north. So it's an important emergency service fix that we hope to get, and we've been trying to work with the U.S. Department of Transportation to get Infrastructure Act funding or Safe Streets funding. That is a work in progress. And then one new project, what you're looking at is the Department of Natural Resources state game area. Represents about 11% of our total land area in Allegan County, and it's quite restrictive on how you can use it, mainly hunting. Lately, we've been trying to work with a number of citizens to construct a bike path across it. So far, we haven't been able to get the DNR to think that's a good idea, but we do need to make greater advantage of this area because this is a huge attraction point for those tourists who want to come to our county, support our citizens, put people to work. So, another thing I just wanted to talk to you as a commissioner, we always face decision points. Every meeting there's a recorded vote on whatever it is, some big things, some little things. American Rescue Plan is a case in point. When we got the $23 million, a lot of people had ideas on how we could use that money. And the board debated this for 3 months. And we finally, on a 4-3 vote, decided to put the money to ARPA versus staffing up this or that agency. And the reason that we did it is because putting the ARPA money into broadband expansion in our county would affect positively everyday citizens and not just some office. 2024, a major change in the life of county commissioners. Up to now, county commissioners, since the 1966 Act that created county commissioners as a successor to the Board of Supervisors, which Eric outlined for you. In 1966, they reduced the term of effectively county commissioners from 4 years to 2 years. Last year, we were able to get the legislature to expand it to 4 years. So this election, very important for people to, as Claudia would say, pay attention, because people who are elected this year will serve for 4 years. I think it's a very good move. Worked pretty hard to get it done because it gives us a chance to take a longer range view rather than reacting to the issue of the day in terms of the future of our counties. But it's important that you elect people who want to take a look at that future. And then I always get down to the role of electeds. You in your county, wherever you live, have put people like me in place to express your will for the future going forward. Sometimes that runs right up against the permanent staff. They have their own ideas, and we're part-time. Well, let me amend that. We're paid part-time. But we certainly, as I mentioned, all the boards and commissions that we work on, makes it a pretty full calendar. But I often have to remind some administrative staff, you were hired to help us represent the will of the people in our county. We're not here to do what you want us to do over that. Sometimes that means we have some frank conversations, but it's a respectful conversation always. The other issue is unfunded delegations by the state government. It's called unfunded mandates. It theoretically is prohibited by the Michigan Constitution. The state government cannot tell a county or city or a village road commission, you do this, without sending the money to do it. Now, sometimes they do it. Like, for example, when the state decided to get into providing indigent defense for those people who can't afford an attorney in a criminal proceeding. They said, okay, counties, you go do it, but we will send you adequate resources, and they have, to their word, provided money for us to do it. On the other end of the spectrum is a historic law. It's called the 1919 Dog Law. And that law says if a dog gets out and attacks livestock and takes the livestock down, you county have to pay for that replacement of the livestock. We get no money for that, but we do get plenty of supervision from the Department of Agriculture on how to do what we don't do. And then finally, I hope that's up there, economic expansion on my cheat sheet didn't show up. Working very closely with our units of government, in this case, City of Holland, for the tremendous manufacturing expansion that we're seeing in the north end of our county, the south end of the City of Holland. Last year, Lakeshore Advantage reports that there was a $3.1 billion investment by new people and returning people in our county. And then, of course, I mentioned the casino. So finally, I invite you to connect with Allegan County. We welcome everybody. I hope that's up there. Yeah, my contact number is up there, and I look forward to, at Claudia's direction, entertaining your questions. And I have one final thing to say, and that is, in this age, when people are so concerned about whether we can work together for the future, you have a Michigan State graduate and a University of Michigan graduate working for the betterment of your county.
Thank you, Eric and Jim. I think I have one more person that may be coming up to help with the mics. Tina's going to, Bob, thank you. And when we're done with questions. And let's just remember that we want to make sure your comments and questions are of a general nature related to the subject of good county governance. Thank you. Do we have any questions?
Jim, a question for you. When we end up with state or federal money that comes to the county to administer it, can the county dictate how that money's going to be spent, or must they follow the state, and if they don't, they get in trouble with the state?
Good question. It really depends on the program that the federal or state government sends the money with. First of all, any money, one of the principles is that any money that comes into the county coffers does have to be appropriated by the County Board of Commissioners. And generally, in our case, I mean, we look at the restrictions that come with it and make that decision up front when we approve. We also work on the front end. The Sheriff's Department wants to get money for, let's say, road patrol activities. Before they can apply for that grant, they have to come to the Board of Commissioners and say, we want to apply for this grant. And there's a good reason for it, because sometimes those grants require significant match of local money. And so we go through the restrictions first, and if we approve the grant application, you know, we're going to approve the money that comes from the state with any strings.
The state has what's called state unrestricted revenue sharing that comes to counties
Right.
and to cities and townships, and that's unrestricted. Most of the time when there's money coming from the state or federal government, it's tied to something. Like they don't want these lowly county commissioners deciding they know what's best for them, and they just want them to use it as the state officials tell them to use it.
Jim, I know the Michigan Association of Counties, I think that's the name of the organization,
Yes.
Helps new commissioners learn how to be good commissioners or to execute good county governance. So can you share a little bit about that? And also, like, do you have some idea about what percentage of new commissioners actually take advantage of that training that's available?
Yeah, after every November general election, the Michigan Association of Counties, in conjunction with Michigan State's local government extension office, conducts new commissioner training, as you said. Every one of our commissioners not only go through it when they're first elected, but I do it every 2 years, because the compendium of what we must do changes every 2 years. On your question about if all commissioners go through it, It really is up to the individual elected commissioner if he or she wants to attend it. I, as a board member of MAC, heartily recommend it. But the education doesn't stop there. We have a number of, in the MAC, we have a number of committees that meet throughout the year. I'm on Ag and General Government and Finance, and we always bring in distinguished speakers like Eric here to help us continue with education. We also have 2 conferences a year at which we get breakout speakers so that county commissioners continue to be educated in this evolving nature of local government. Eric, do you have anything to add?
Local government education of this nature is kind of like going to church. The ones that need it the most are not the ones in the pews.
That isn't true in Allegan, right? No.
You have told us that there is 100% attendance from Allegan County. Yeah, a lot of states make it mandatory, and the state government is much more involved in providing the guidance. Michigan has left it to the different associations, the Association of Counties and the Municipal League, to provide that training. I think that's a weakness for Michigan. The state should be doing better.
I think you suggested that one improvement to county government could be if county offices were not partisan. How could that change be made? Is that subject to local decision, or would that require a change in state law or even the state constitution?
It would have to be done at the state level, and I wish I had gone back and read it. I think it's in the Constitution that they'll be elected on a partisan basis, as it is the case for our township officials. So it's not an issue as expensive as it is to have a campaign to amend the Constitution. It's not something that's going to raise to the level of anybody circulating petitions or even our legislature taking the time to get this on the ballot. But our legislature just simply doesn't spend enough time or attention thinking about what's best for our local governments, and that's a shame.
You had mentioned that if I heard it right, commissioners have the power of the purse, but also they're autonomous. So at what point can the county avoid the Board of Commissioners like spending more than going into debt? At what point does somebody say you got to stop, or how do they determine that indeed they're going to have a balanced budget from year to year, which I think they probably have to do, but who checks that if they're autonomous?
Yeah, so at the beginning of every fiscal year, there's a budget adopted that appropriates a certain amount of money to each department. In most counties, I think almost every county now has a county administrator that is monitoring the expenditure of those funds, and the county clerk plays a role in that execution. So I'm not aware of anybody really going over, but there's usually some tension in how much is being appropriated, because I, the sheriff, certainly think my needs are much more responsible than the clerk or the Register of Deeds. So there's that tension in how much money should be appropriated, and each one being autonomous, there is not an inherent system of give and take built into that. You have any thoughts?
Well, there probably, I don't know if there's a formal, well, some counties, I can't remember if you touched on this, some counties have county executives.
2 of them.
Yeah.
Well, this gets really complicated. We have 2 county governments with charter counties, Wayne and Macomb, and Oakland and Bay County have an executive, but it's kind of a glorified administrator. They don't really have strong powers. So we have 4 executives, but everyone else has a county administrator.
Right. And in the 2 cases where you have elected the Wayne and Macomb, right, have these county executives, they can veto appropriations by the Board of Commissioners. In counties like the rest of us, the rest of the 81, we're kind of disciplined by a couple of things: our bond rating, Every time the bond rating goes down, the cost to borrow money, which you have to do from time to time, whether for building projects or even some operational needs, that cost of borrowing goes up if your credit rating goes down. And your credit rating goes down if you are kind of a spendthrift county. So there's that discipline. But then there's the discipline of you all. I mean, as I said, we stream our meetings on YouTube. We put them on Zoom. I personally do a weekly newsletter. Anyone who wants to get it, no matter what county you're in, I'd be happy to put you on the list. So there are all those mechanisms for helping you make sure we put money in the right place where you want it, and B, don't spend more than we're taking it.
Thanks to both of you, first of all, and I think you both did a great job. Eric, I have a specific question, because it's two personal issues. The first personal issue is if I dial 911 from my home, the Ottawa County 911 group is extremely confused because I'm a good Allegan County resident. I happen to live in the city of Holland, and the training there is terrible in Ottawa County as far as having them understand how to serve Allegan County residents. They're a contractor to the city, and it can be really a rough situation. My second question is, I'm involved with a group called Operation Lifesaver, a railroad-oriented group. We get, again, the same problems. We have 64th Street in Holland, and we have 64th, either street or avenue out in Ottawa County. And again, the 911 group has no comprehension of my question. How many cities are in two counties? Because this is not, in those two areas, we see malfunction living in Allegan County.
To the best of my recollection, it's about 17 or 18 cities that overlap into two counties, and there is about an equal number of villages that do. So we're talking about 30 to 35 local units, cities or villages that border a county, and the issues are the same in all of those. What county are you in? Often the residents aren't quite clear. Where exactly does that line lay? It's a real issue. Jim, you must have to deal with this some as you represent the residents of Holland.
Yes, thank you, Eric, and thank you, Rick, for the question. Long time ago, the city of Holland and Ottawa County and Allegan County law enforcement representatives decided that because at that time most of Holland, and to this day most of the population of Holland is in Ottawa County, that it would be best if Ottawa County Dispatch handled all of the emergency calls for the city of Holland rather than Allegan County. Another area where that extends is you all hear the emergency warning sirens that are exercised once a month. In the city of Holland, those are exercised by Ottawa County, no matter what part of the city you live in, for the same reason. So going forward, I don't know if that will change going forward. They continually, periodically meet to talk about these issues. And one of the things that I do want to say is, as I put in my presentation, the 911 Emergency Dispatch Center is part of the county government in Allegan County. It is not the case in Ottawa. Ottawa has a separate authority that runs their 911 dispatch system. So, anytime you create different organizations within the big picture of county government, sometimes frictions arise. Can't imagine it. It happens in families too, right? But thanks for surfacing that. I will certainly mention it to our 911 director and see if we can't make some improvements.
We were asked as we were put this together to leave you with a few questions that you can take from this as you think about what is good county government and applying it to your own experience. So I'll just leave these up here. I think she's ready to wrap this up, but you want me to walk through them?
Do we have time to just walk through them quickly? Okay.
Yeah, so I talked about transparency. Is the sun shining on your county? So our discussions held in public meetings, that hasn't always been the case, but we want everything that affects you to be decided in the open. Are records available when sought? Open meetings, public records, freedom of information. Are the commission and committee meetings open to the public? Are they streamed on the internet so you don't have to leave your house? And are they archived? Sometimes you're busy at whatever that appointed hour is, but can you go back and watch it? Are the elected officials accountable? Are they challenged in elections? We have our favorite county commissioners, but competition's good. It brings out the best in everyone and makes sure that the people running for office are listening to the people and hearing their concerns. Are the county commissioners attending the meetings of the township boards, the city councils, the school boards, and is their attendance advertised so that you know I don't have to go all the way to the county seat? I can go to my local township board, I can go to the city council and have a chance to hear from that person what's important to them. Go out and buy the Holland Sentinel because we need to make sure the media is playing a vital role as the fourth rail, providing accountability. Are the actions of the county government covered in the newspapers, on television, radio, in blogs? That's become a more and more important way of accountability and spreading news of what's going on in county government. For those with the ability to, what is the cost of county government relative to your peers? So what are the spending levels generally, but also how much is the clerk paid compared to your comparison county governments? Well, how much is the treasurer? How much is the dog catcher? It can get very in the weeds. You want to know the salary levels, you want to know the appropriations. How does your tax rate for your county government compare to peer governments? And then I would just leave by the final thought, are there signs of strife among departments between the executive offices and the county commissioners and with funding of the courts? When the things are clicking along, everybody can sit down and understand how their needs relative to the others, and there's little strife. When there's disagreement and that boils up into the news, that's when signs that things aren't going well and signs that there's room for improvement. So just some final thoughts to take away as you wrap this up.
Thank you. Very good thoughts. I would like to thank Eric for defining good county government for us, and Jim for sharing with us personal experiences and what is happening in Allegan County. So a round of applause for Eric and Jim. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Now, our next meeting is going to be April 30th. I know it should be in May, but then in this town, something called tulip time happens. And so we have to be assigned to a little bit different. So remember, Tuesday, April 30th. Now, you are not going to want to miss this presentation. It is Brian Huffman. He's an ophthalmologist with Shoreline Vision, but I think Brian's real claim to fame is he's a marathon swimmer. He swam the English Channel. He just recently completed the I think it's called the 7 Bridges of New York, where he swam around Staten Island. He is going to talk to us, in case any of us want to take up that sport, what his conditioning is, how he practices. And I will tell you this, I know that he swims in Lake Michigan from Grand Haven to Holland to get in shape for one of these swims. So it's going to be a very, very interesting talk, and you're not going to want to miss it on April 30th. Now, I know John always leaves you with a quote, so I found a quote I thought I would like to leave you with. It's from Ruth Bader Ginsburg as we end on March 31st, the end of Women's History Month, and she said, "The greatest menace to freedom is an inert people. Fight for the things you care about, but do it in a way that will lead others to join you. Thank you.